Good time of day to all of you, my chess friends. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky. Welcome. A live show. Russian Schoolboy Live. Well, here I am. Summer is here, wearing a nice hat. No provocative, offensive messages. No messages at all on the hat. See? Good time of day to all of you, my chess friends. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky. And today's talk, I'm going back to my starting soon page. New European champion, Russian Grandmaster Ernesto Inarkiev, the man you may have never heard of. Well, here he is, top left and top right. Look at this. This is not some kind of a commercial. This is his support group. Actually, it's hard to see there, but we say we support Ernesto Inarkiev. And these girls, that's nicely done. I'm telling you, with support like this, no wonder that Ernesto did incredible things this month. Let me just show you what he did. Right here on this page, which I lifted off live chess rating site. Well, thank you to the Norwegian group of people that made it possible. It's an excellent source to keep your tabs on changes, rating and otherwise tournaments, all that. Look what Inarkiev done in this month. Okay, it starts on May 1st, goes on May 23rd. 2 tournaments. Well, the team tournament, the Russian Premier League, and then the European Championship. Altogether, 17 games. Good for a gain of 42.7 rating points. Pushing his rating up to 27-28. Rounding up, that would be 27-29. And that's number 27 in the world. His highest ever. Now, Inarkiev. He's not a youngster, right? He's been around for 10 or 15 years. I see his games every once in a while and heard his name. Well, you know what? This is good. When a surge like this, when it's accomplished by a player, well, I still call them middle age for a chess player. A lot of people believe that, you finished at 30. I just don't want this to be this way, honestly. Maybe because I'm going back and I'm thinking of the old days, when I basically just got my act together, after I was turned 30 or 31 or 32, whatever, and really made a push to accomplish something in chess. And I had my detractors, I had some doubters, and the biggest one was me. The toughest maybe was to convince myself that I can do this. No, it involved some things, quitting my job, whatever. And maybe I'm sure I hurt a lot of people, by doing this who kind of didn't want me to do that. But I did it nonetheless. And I had, maybe a short life over there left as a chess player. But I certainly enjoyed the next 8 to 10 years in my career. And now Inarkiev. Well, it's not like he ever quit. Obviously, he didn't. He played all the time in tournaments and up and down, kind of. But sometimes some men, they just really need to get their life together for that. Well, that's something I miss, that fleeting little thing, that prevents you from realizing your chess potential. It's not always your lack of openings or endgame knowledge or your inability to deal with time trouble or the various other things, or simply health. Well, sometimes it's just your personal life. Well, some of the top chess players, put it this way, they became so strong, so young, that they were basically built their life around chess, right? And everybody was just like fawning over them and they say, oh, Gary, you're such a genius. And nobody in their right mind would say, you know what, Gary, I like you, but why are you playing chess? It just never occurred to anybody. Same thing with Bobby Fischer, and I'm sure same with Magnus Carlsen. And not only world champions. No, Anish Giri comes to mind, Sergei Karyakin, no, a lot of people. But the thing is, not everyone is able to do this, to make this push early when you're 12 or 13 and you're already at 2600 and you're grandmaster. Yeah, Karyakin, Carlson, Giri, like they're able to do this. Caruana, well, I guess, like if you look at the top group of players, and it doesn't matter now or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I guess that most of the spots were occupied by guys like this. But there is little room, even if it's not for a long time. But there is a little bit of room there, open for the, I call them mere mortals. People who basically struggled for many years, accomplished something, obviously. You're probably not going to make it to top 10 in the world if you're an 1800 player, say at the age of 20, or maybe even at the age of 15. Yeah, you have to progress a little faster, but the players who get stuck maybe at the 2500 level or whatever now, maybe at 26, well, they're not that far off, to be honest. I mean, the difference in a couple of hundred rating points, it can be bridged. And particularly if you finally, your life kind of is in order and now you have support of your loved ones, everything is in place and you're in good physical and mental health. And that's where you made a push. I believe that's happening with Inarkiev now. I really like his chess, and I got a lot of examples to show you today, obviously from these two tournaments. And is there anyone out there to talk to me? And maybe you have something to say in as far as Ernesto's result going on. No, right, I'll start with the games. I hope you guys will catch on. And also, I shouldn't forget that this whole thing is recorded, and probably most people would watch it in in delay, I almost say tape delay, then I realized that probably anybody younger than 40 years old would not know what I'm talking about. They used to be like this, okay, so the guy says, all right, and then today's matchup of the day, the New York Giants defeated the Dallas Cowboys and by scoring this and that. And I say, let's go to the videotape. What? Now you say, what? What? Videotape? What's that? Anyway, that's my videotape. And I start with the first game, right there at top of the list. His first win over Leonid Dominguez. That's, of course, from the Russian team championship. Okay, that's what you think, Winston Smith. Yeah. Well, it's like, okay, let's not discuss this. Otherwise, I'll start discussing your handle and think, why is that, that you choose Winston Smith? Okay, or maybe you could tell us, like, obviously, well, most of people would know where it comes from, but the real question is why. All right, so that was an interesting game, but I don't want to show the whole thing. I just want to finish the end of this game, where obviously White has an extra pawn, and his pawns are very threatening, but the king in the middle open like this, well, a lot of people could, maybe Inarkiev himself on a bad day, could kind of freak out, and misplay this position. No, well, yeah, obviously, 1984, yeah, but why? Why do you choose this character? Okay, well, look at Inarkiev. He goes King D1. Now, there's no fear whatsoever. Ernesto was always pretty good in tactics. I mean, he's a career E4 player, and he's just used to calculating on every move. He doesn't seek safety over, there is nothing to calculate here. No, well, he doesn't matter. Even if his position is much better, he's always looking for the best move and the quickest way to win. So here the king goes to d1. Obviously, Linnea has to open up his bishop because he simply cannot get his rooks into play. Now, a tempo, and then push. Now, Hall immediately white gets down to business and he wants to promote his C and B pawns. So the D pawn is sacrificed. E4. Well, not interested in this. And here is the moment where, alright, you can take over there and then takes this, and then you have choices actually. You could take with the queen, but then this bishop kind of comes out to c3. And then things might get kind of out of control. Look at Inarkiev's decision. Wow, that's maturity. So he calculates the line where black's options are very limited. And it's important to do, to be able to calculate accurately and avoid blunders. So you simply go to a kind of position where you might have to see a little bit deeper, might even have to make some evaluations toward the end of the line. But a good thing is that the opponent cannot step aside. It doesn't have any alternatives. There it goes. Rook c2. Nice. Okay, sacrifice is given. Obviously nothing unusual, but still, white needs to get that bishop into play. No, I would not prefer O'Brien, well, no, I wouldn't. Well, if... come to think of that, like, I don't know really if you should turn this into a debate on the book, but funny thing is, that when I read this book in the Soviet Union, I was in the Soviet Union, well, it wasn't forbidden there, right? So how you think, how is it possible? Isn't this the greatest satire, or, not even satire, the greatest condemnation, of all things communist? Well, let me tell you something. In the Soviet Union, they presented this book like, okay, this is the book about imperialism, about like England of today or whatever, or some near future, or the United States. No, well, obviously they didn't bother to ask George Orwell himself what did he mean, but I don't think Orwell would necessarily have this answer like, okay, of course that's the Soviet Union, because look, they arrest people over there. I don't think so. I think there is much more to that book than just simple condemnation of Stalin's Soviet Union. Or obviously, part of it was there. Anyway, so at the cost of the exchange now that, basically the field is clear now, so white is pushing pawns forward, but there was this thing that bishop f1. Alright, so the bishop has to enter from c4. And white is waiting for black to take on d6. Finally it happens. The pawn goes forward. And that's basically the end of the game. Dominguez resigned here. Only one line here to look at. What if instead of rook d7, black played objectively better move, rook to b8. So now bishop f1 would still have to be played. I'm sure it was analyzed by Ernesto, and that's, by the way, making the time control. Another very important thing is when you calculate variations, you're always aware of the time on the clock, and you just have to be able to kind of map out the next stage of your campaign, in this case a chess game, by thinking, am I going to reach the time control, or am I going to face a tough decision and move 39 and move 40? So it wasn't the case here. So he'll probably play bishop f1 quickly and do the same thing. And now black can actually blockade the pawns. Yeah, there is no direct win by promotion here. No. But white would probably go bishop c4 check there. And I'm not even sure he needs to go bishop e6 here. Bishop e6 and king f6. So gives the important temper. No, I think it's rook d2. But that would already be move 43. Then the white quietly takes the pawn on d6, deprives the opponent of any kind of counterplay. Even the king is not going anywhere, right? Gets pushed back. Now white can improve his king gradually because black is pretty much hopeless here. Well, maybe white is not queening yet, but eventually he will. The path for the king could be like this. No, right, anyway, so it was clear. Okay, so done with that game, and then next game. Okay, once again, I'm just showing the fragments. There was actually an interesting game. His opponent was another high-rated player, Dmitry Yakovenko. But Dmitry recently has been struggling, so, well, you probably remember that he almost qualified for a candidates tournament. He finished third in the FIDE Grand Prix cycle altogether, just behind Caruana and Nakamura. And there was this talk that maybe Topalov would turn it down because Topalov didn't feel like playing, or didn't feel like playing in Moscow or whatever. Then Yakovenko would be there. A decent player he is, but somehow he's in the slump now. And in this game, I think Inarkiev felt the opponent's weakness, lack of confidence, whatever it is. And he pushed very hard against Berlin. You don't see that very often. Of course, e6 was played at some moment. And he was able to win back the h5 pawn. But there is a lot of pieces on the board here. On the first glance, it's impossible to tell who stands better here. Well, the position of the black knight on h6, of course, is the major concern over there. White's... Okay, hang on a second. Yeah. So White is thinking at some moment to play g4, and maybe that's what Yakovenko would have done if he was White. He is the positional player par excellence, and he likes to restrict opponent's pieces. But then Black maybe can get this knight back by playing knight g8 and knight f6. And interestingly enough, that Inarkiev is not looking to win the game by advancing his kingside pawns. Okay. Yeah, I played Kasparov and I chose 2-knight tango, opening that I can comment. Yeah, I'll just tell you briefly that the opening is suspect, but I mean, I had to play something. It was toward the end of this tournament at Chess Olympiad. And honestly, I was drained. I played practically every day due to some problems with our team, the US team, was down to 5 players. You say, what's the big deal? Then I'll have 5 players. Well, the big deal is that we had 14 rounds and not what they have now. Was it 11? It was longer. Anyway, so I was kind of drained and I don't know. Honestly, I thought Gary would play e4 against me. I was surprised that he played d4 and I wasn't prepared at all. So I went for the tango, but I kind of felt that he would not go into principled lines where White is trying to refute the opening. So the opening was more or less okay. It basically was the exchange Queen's Gambit structure. Well, I got outplayed later on, so no. It wasn't really the opening. Anyway, so this position, we look at how White is going to win this game. Well, by playing king f2 and g4 and king g3 advancing. No, sir, no. Well, he finds tactical play everywhere. So he plays this move, and it hits the pawn on a7. Unpleasant moment, really. I mean, Black obviously was looking for counterplay with b4. Now, if you play c5, now c5 is possible, but it somehow makes this bishop little shaker. It was the stronghold, right? And now if White somehow switches his knights around, then at the right moment he can play like knight f4. No, it's not clear how to move this knight away, of course, so that still remains a problem. But I guess that's why he wanted Black to play c5, and Yakovenko didn't want to do this. On the other hand, rook b7, he probably felt uncomfortable doing this, because then the rook is going to be tied down to the pawn. Anyway, the decision was made to sacrifice this pawn. No, but... So Black's looking for counterplay, right? So he wants to hit the c pawn. He figures the a pawn he can somehow deal with. No, there comes a tactical shot. Of course you can say, well, it's so simple, there are 2 bishops there, but the ability to see tactics, later in the game where it wasn't really tactical, it was more of a positional struggle. And yet to be able to stay focused and tactically alert, that's a good thing. And there's no solution to this. Now after the dark square bishop's gone from the board, white just simply went after the g7 pawn, and there was no way black could obtain any counterplay. The bishop remained on d5 as a great piece, but it has very little to do with stopping the h-pawn. Yeah. No, these two wins. So you go out there, play for your team, and first 2 rounds, right? You meet with tough players, the higher rated than you, the more accomplished than you, and then you score these 2 wins. A great boost. Well, I'm telling you, from my experience, and I talked to a lot of people and found themselves in the same situation as I did. The main thing is confidence. You talk a lot about experience, and some people, non-chess players, always ask, why do you say that you can't play chess anymore? Well, you have a lot of experience now, you should be getting stronger. No, the experience, to be honest, most of the time consists of bad memories. Memories of failure. Well, you play a game and in the opening, it's familiar. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Oh yeah, I played this before and I lost. Somehow losses, they stick to your memory better than wins. Of course, there are some wins, but only something really very special, like you defeat some great player or maybe win a brilliant game. Well, most of wins, they're just routine, but losses are not routine. Well, so therefore, the so-called experienced player is often a jaded and disillusioned old man. That's what he really is. And it's certainly not the way to play chess. It's not the right state. A couple of wins at the start of an event, can do wonders. Well, and they help some people more than others. Inarkiev always been a risk taker and aggressive player. So for him it was more important, say somebody of a more positional kind, the same Yakovenko. Guys, he wins a couple games and he thinks, okay, I'm +2 already, now I'm gaining rating, let me protect it. He would actually eliminate risk or reduce risk in his future games. Inarkiev reacts to this differently. Now, with this boost of confidence, he would just go forward. Once again, I probably could have shown you the whole game. But he pushed very hard against the young Vlad Artemiev, who's Russia's brightest, youngest star, player already of some accomplishments and pretty close to 2700. So it wasn't clear who was favorite in this game, but Inarkiev played very aggressively and put some pressure on the opponent. So now, look what happened. He gives this check. 1 second. Normally, white should play knight f1. He attacks the pawn and it's just impossible really for black to make progress, because the next move is going to be knight d2, saying reply to queen f5. Now we're going to trade queens, I'll take on f3 after you're taking a pawn, or this one or that one, and then we agree to a draw. That would be a normal result of the game. But this is when it happens. You can't really explain it. All of a sudden, just everything comes your way. The goddess of chess, Kaisha, so she smiles at you. Oh man, that's almost in every game. Look what happened. It is hard to believe. The young Artemiev played queen f1. Of course, knight takes g3. There it goes. Another win over a high-rated player. Well, before he got there, he played practically every day, but look at the people he drew. Kamsky, Vityugov, and Tomaszewski. Basically all... No, Gata is not 2700 now, but we all know how strong Gata is. So very strong field. Very strong field. Well, Ernesto, his team wasn't the strongest team. So his team wasn't really in contention to win, but he played on board one and he got... I don't know if it was time travel. Perhaps move 37, who knows. It's a terrible blunder. Well, one wonders, what kind of bad form, one of the, if not the brightest young player in Russia should be to blunder a fork like this. It's just hard to imagine. But he had many losses already before that, so they was already played in round 8. One round before the end. So Ernesto finishes in this stretch. Okay, let me go back. Finishes the stretch of 6 games he plays. And 3 wins and 3 draws. Artemiev actually was the lowest rated player in this group, followed by Kamsky, 2670. It's a great score. All right. Confidence. Building confidence. All right. Off we go. European Championship. Well, I actually did some work on this tournament. I did a couple of shows on a Russian channel that recently appeared on Twitch, together with the very experienced and, actually Russia's #1 chess commentator, Grandmaster Sergei Shipov. I'm very honored, to be his partner now. And we talked about the European Championship and actually the Russian Team Championship as well. Those of you who understand Russian, welcome to follow us. Well, it's... you will find us. Anyway, I'll talk about this later, maybe on a private channel, if anybody asks. Yeah. So, first of all, this tournament, the European Championship, took place in Kosovo. No, now Kosovo is an independent country, for better or worse. But Kosovo's been always kind of a backward part, province of the former Yugoslavia and then of Serbia. It really, the infrastructure is not quite there. So they build up some things. The hotel was nice, but they have problems with electricity, so obviously with the internet. But the organizers did a very good job still building this new hotel, and also food was okay, as from what I gathered, but there were some problems, and hot water problems, and particularly power and the internet. Of course, the chess players are very spoiled now, so they win a game and then they want to go to some social networks to see their army of supporters, heaping praise on them, but not everyone, by far not everyone, has an army of supporters like this one, right? Look at the top right corner again. Now look at me, pretty girls, right? By the way, Inarkiev is happily married. Well, and I don't think his wife is among these girls, but I'm not sure. Maybe she is. Anyway. There we go. Now, this is an opening game. No, not the opening game. This is the second round game. An opponent, Grandmaster Svetushkin, is a 2500 guy. Not really such a weak player. And by the way, the opening basically didn't go in White's favor. Ernesto follows the modern recommendations. So he plays d3 in Roy Lopez, but the opponent played energetically, gained the bishop pair, and maybe even threatens to take over the game. Black just needs to somehow push the white pieces back, but say if somehow he goes king h8 and then f5 and g6 and just pushes the knight away from e4 and restricts this knight, he's simply gonna win the game. Yeah, I guess that's what he was aiming for. And besides, he wanted to cover f5. g6. Now, it's a terrible move. Yeah, f6 is under control. That's true. But black needed this bishop d8 to go elsewhere. Let's compare it to this move, right? Battery. Very nice. Now, if white pushes forward, that's what Inarkiev did in the game. Then there is capture, and if you take with the rook, black is happy to win the exchange. Because nothing's happening on f6. Now, probably Inarkiev would have to take with the pawn, and now knight c4. Yeah, the pawn is going forward, but no, the bishop is now shut down, and no, there are some diagonals open against the white king. This is probably not a good idea because of the check followed by knight e3. So it's a very double-edged game, and if anything, I prefer black here. Svetoshkin makes an error now. Well, when you're in good form and you believe in yourself, then no position seems dead, hopeless for you. You just expect good things to happen. And it helps find good moves, because I experienced that. It's like, okay, you managed to play 20 good moves, but okay, now it's time for you to make a mistake. You almost will your opponent into making a mistake. In those glorious moments when everything falls your way. Yeah, and then you pounce, d4, very energetic. Takes, queen e7. Alright, a career e4 player, always eye on the king. f6 square, you need the f6 square. Ernesto just goes rook takes d8. What a way to get the job done. Now, two knights. The g3 knight is threatening to come to f5. Svetoshkin runs away with check. Still he cannot find time for consolidating move. The queen and two knights, and also supported by rook and bishop. Every piece participates in the attack. Black's counterattack against g2 just never materializes. He went knight d3, hoping for knight f2 check. And then the finish. Nice move. Well, what else to do? If you take, comes just bishop takes f7. Then black will lose another rook. No time for that. Now in desperation he goes knight f2. He's trying, but still bishop takes f7. Oh, child's play, of course. Checkmating in short order, I assume, in two moves. I don't see checkmate in one, so I will mate in two moves, okay. Good enough. Oh, pardon me, I missed a pretty mate, h3. Well, nothing special so far, right? You say, well, it just takes advantage of people's mistakes. No, that's what Magnus Carlsen does. That's what every good player does. Come to think of that. Honestly, look at your own games. Wherever you are, you're at 2200, 2500, 1700, and just imagine one thing, where you would have been if you took advantage of every opportunity that comes around, even for 1 month. You would have gained a lot of rating points. You would have won tournaments. Well, it's tough, chess games, people make mistakes. The ability to capitalize on opponent's mistakes is arguably the most important thing for a chess player. Okay. Go scrolling down. Endgame expertise. Alright, Ernesto honestly was never known for his endgame expertise. He was an attacking player, he was and still is. And I'm sure he's mainly looking to to beat people like he beat Svetushkin in the previous game. But strong player, and Ernesto is number 27 in the world now, has to be strong in every stages of the game. This is a good example. His opponent is Denis Ismatulin. Well, a guy who maybe a year or two ago seemed that he would be there instead of Inarkiev. He was over 2700 briefly maybe, and played in the Russian Premier League. No, very tough player. No, it's about the same age. Tough fighter, but I guess what's stopping Denis from accomplishing more is just time trouble. Every game, he just wants it all. Similar to his buddy Grishuk. No, they kind of feed off each other, you know, who's gonna get in worse time trouble in the next game. Trying to outdo each other, and that honestly not a very good idea. Alright. Black's upper pawn. The rook's ideally positioned behind the b pawn. But I will push it forward. Comes e5. And now in this situation, rook takes, king there. White can play rook takes h6. Not exactly, you know, where you want your rook to be, right? The b3 is not a winning move, it's now a losing move. How to improve? Well, this is the question that some people simply fail to ask themselves. They look at one line in the endgame and they see it doesn't work, and then they start looking absolutely elsewhere. No, yeah, but you look at the position, that key position over there, and think, what if my rook was not on the 7th? Why do I have to walk into the square? And then the solution comes to you. Move rook b8. Very quiet move. Now, probably Ismatulin thought, okay, he's putting me in zugzwang. He just wants my rook to leave a6, so then I don't have the e5 idea. So he plays the move h3. And he probably thought, okay, he's probably gonna go back and forth with the rook, and then I'll figure it out. h3 is useful. In fact, Ismatulin didn't have the time to play h3. I don't know how to save the game here. Now you can try this and then use the king to stop the pawn. It's usually the right idea because you want your rook active. Next is rook h7. Yeah, but before this happens, rook f8. Very unfortunate. So the b pawn serves as decoy, and now black will collect the h2 pawn and will bring the king up. This is a very tough endgame to save. I don't know if it's possible to save it. But probably it would be a better idea. Now you take, and if king e5, you go. Perhaps you go king c6. No, you're probably gonna lose this, right? King f4. Yeah, that's gonna be tough. But anyway, an attempt. Instead, h3, now the pawn goes forward. No, this line shows b4 takes king e7. No time to take this pawn on h6, because now after this, checks just won't do, because the king comes to there and then the f7 to g6. So what else to do here? Maybe move the king up. Now threatening. Yeah, most likely this check, king c4 and b2. Yeah, I don't think white will save this down the queen with just a rook. Ismatulin went back. Now rook b7. No, it's a classic situation. Obviously, white begins to run out of moves. He went there. Nice technique. No, probably d5 would be enough to win, but, well, this is actually more reliable. Transposing to a different kind of advantage now. The king is very active and simply going to maintain this winning unit, the connected passed pawns. Well, they're gonna be passed pawns because the king obviously would come to f4. What did he do? King there. Yeah, this was not gonna work. Resigned. Well, pretty good. Not a very difficult endgame, but once again, job well done. Now, it is time to show how Inarkiev handles more difficult situations. After this great start, once again, let me show you the great start of the European Championship. 4 out of 4. He also beat Andreasian with white. Now with 4 out of 4, he gets to play White Ashik, who played great chess in the beginning of the European Championship. I was very impressed with the way Radoslav played. So was gonna be a tough battle. Show it from the beginning. Now Inarkiev is pretty good with white pieces against the Sicilian, but White Ashik, come on, he taught Anand how to play this, right? So here we go, the Najdorf. Don't roll your eyes, guys. And I made a joke. Obviously, White Ashik did not teach Anand how to tie his shoes or play the Najdorf. I know that, but well, it's just yet, Radoslav White Ashik has been a top guy in Anand's camp, already for many matches and important tournaments, and in charge of all openings. That's why White Ashik's openings are so great. Plays bishop e6. Move order of things anyway. Yeah. I'm gonna skip the whole thing. Well, it's not gonna be a lecture on the Najdorf. Besides, I'm really no expert in this. But okay, this is interesting. Queen takes b4, previously played, and now queen a5. It's not the first time. Actually, in that game I skipped, where he beat Andreasian in round 4 of the European Championship, a very similar situation was there. So somehow that English attack, when Inarkiev plays it, often leads to a situation where white wins the pawn on the queen side, gives up the pawn on the king side, and they really switch roles and begin to play on what some people would think the wrong side of the board. And indeed, okay, this was a novelty preparation. Indeed, the move was supposed to be bishop g5, played previously by Linear Dominguez. Then it would go this way. King b1, takes and takes. I don't know. Can you evaluate this position? Who do you like here, white or black? I'm honestly not sure. I think white is looking to play knight c5. That's this bishop on e6 he's after. Black, on the other hand, has the f4 square for the knight. I don't know. I guess Inarkiev felt, that there is something here for white. When I showed this game already and elsewhere, that Russian site on Twitch, I said what all these years, I played chess, right? And I never learned to play these positions. It's difficult to rest your eye on anything here. There are no plans to be followed here. It's all kind of random, You try this, you try that, and incredibly tactically charged. Well, maybe back then when I played, there were every once in a while there would be a game like this and played by players who can handle that. But no, still largely, well, you could still be a good player, maybe even top 20 in the world, as I briefly was, while simply avoiding those kind of irrational situations, at least not inviting them very often. I don't think it's possible anymore. Chess really has changed, and Inarkiev is right there with the flow. So is Vaitashek, by the way. Bishop takes a2. I'm like, what is this? Is that Spassky Fischer game 1 from Reykjavik revisited? Isn't this bishop gonna be trapped? Yeah, but when I start looking at this, the white king is so shaky. Black can play knight c5. What now? Knight c4, logically, right? We have to win this, or force the exchange, and then we take with the king and win that. Is that correct? Hannibal Lecter. Jesus Christ, I mean, this guy was a goddamn, I don't know what, maniac, like, do I really look like, I mean, like I torture little kittens, and I don't know, just murder people, keep their parts in the freezer. Is it really so? I mean, come on. I'm a family man. I'm a nice guy, look, all these years, working here on the internet chess club, and I get compared, to one of the most despicable characters. You say, okay, he's brilliant. Yeah, well, who cares? Brilliant. Maybe. Even his brilliance I don't want. Anyway, speaking of brilliance, what do you do now with black? As I said, you take on b2, you're gonna lose that bishop. Now, this is Vaitashek's preparation, by the way. I'm sure. It's a compliment. Yeah, right. It's a compliment. Ooh. Who wins the most Sicilian, white or black? I guess white wins. No, it used to be sort of a skewed ratio because most top players play the Sicilian, always played it against lower rated players. And that's why black would win maybe more than he should have, because oftentimes black would just be a high rated player. Things have changed for the past 20 years. I think white scores quite heavily, and I don't know, Topalov, checkered success. Anand keeps the Sicilian as, I'm not sure it's still main opening, maybe it is, hard to tell. But a lot of people, like Kramnik, simply stopped playing the Sicilian. It just became tough. Oh, a classy dresser. All right. Okay, now I understand it, what it is. Yeah. Okay, look at this. Black can just play rook c8. Oh no. Thing of beauty. Worth of Hannibal Lecter. Yeah. If he played chess, he would play rook c8 and give it a smile. Yeah, well, I don't know if maybe already capture is threatening, right? Or sacrifice a piece, and then the white king will find itself in trouble. Alright, so what to do? You get hit by a novelty like this. Obviously, your opponent is very well prepared. A lot of people, even the great players, they're so used to being like ahead of the opponent in theoretical research, they don't really react well when things like this happen. But you have to. You have to overcome this. I don't know what the right word is to describe this feeling. It's almost disgust, because these days, well, how much credit you want to give to your opponent for catching you in his little opening trap like this? It's trade queens on a5 and win the pawn on a2. You say, oh, well, it's not you, it's your computer, and now I'm playing against the computer. But no, The only way is to keep on fighting, and that's why this example, I think it's very important for us to follow, to understand what helped Ernesto Inarkiev to accomplish what he accomplished. Knight c6. He's not looking back. What now? Rook's coming to c8, attacking the knight. This knight is stuck on a4, eventually bishop b3. Is he gonna have to go back with the knight? Nah. What a brilliant move it is. Well, turns out, when black takes, the bishop takes, and there you have it. Two pieces hanging on the d file. Now we're on psychology and chess with all. I'm hardly qualified. I mean, Krogios had this whatever, you know. I think he was a PhD in psychology. Obviously, he was also, you know, the scummiest golden boy over there and basically sat over there, you know, like the position of power, you know. I hate his guts. Given a choice between Hannibal Lecter and Nikolai Krogios as my roommate, I don't know. I would do some hard thinking. But, yeah, it's an interesting subject. You know, there was another guy who studied chess psychology, you know, was Tigran Petrosian, although he was hardly an academician, but I think that's what he did. And also my good friend Jan Elvest, he graduated with degree in psychology from famous Tartu University in Estonia, one of the oldest European universities. Yeah, but I'm hardly qualified to talk about this stuff. Well, I'm just, I don't know, sometimes I'm just talking out of my head, or, I don't know, just observations. Yeah, anyway, so this is a great trick. How he found knight c3? No, you have to believe in yourself, right? Look at tactics, but he found it. Now the bishop has to go back. Still it looks troublesome for white, but now knight d5. Look, he's stopping this rook c8 because of the check. And the knights are so dominating that white Ashik had to trade. So now white has the bishop pair. The d5 pawn is in trouble. If you lose that pawn on d5, then eventually your knight will be chased out of there. Absolutely, white cannot rest for one moment. He has to play all precise moves. And another fantastic move. Opening up the bishop if needed to go to g2, but importantly, undermining the d4 pawn. This was really great. White Ashik finds a good answer. White, by the way, if he maintains material balance, he's going to be better because of the bishops. And look at that pawn on a6, target in the endgame. White often succeeds in those endgames. That's the modern way of playing the Sicilian, because his king is there supporting the passed pawns. Now, I mean, I can only watch in fascination how these guys played. Now, seems like white is winning, right? I thought if bishop takes, that misplaced the pieces so badly, and then white will get the pawn on a4 and maintain the knight on c6. The knight on h5 is left out, right? It's hard to even find a good square for this knight. Yeah, but instead, rook c8. Nice acrobatics by both players. The bishop goes to e7, and now bishop back to d2. Inarkiev is temporarily down a pawn, but important thing is that he doesn't give black a chance to connect f-pawn with the e-pawn, and he's gonna win the e4 pawn back. And it happens here, and now... Is he gonna be down a pawn struggling? No, sir. Knight d6. A great move it is. Moving the knight in the middle to e4, and attacking the bishop and using the shaky position of the knights, possibly with c4, chasing the knight away and winning the f4 knight. Black had to do this, keep the rook on the board. Another great shot, h4. As I said, like, I mean, well, I could play one or two moves like this, but all this sequence that goes on for 10 moves, all the best moves, if some 2100 player played it against Wojtaszek or Inarkiev, we would all scream, "Computer! Computer!" Yeah. It's not good to go to h6 because of knight f5. Then takes the bishop and... well... And finally this whole thing is gonna come to an end. No win for either side, but white takes the pawn back. And... no, they did play for a few more moves just to reach the time control, but it's dead even, and the draw was a fair result. It's an amazing game to me. To me, a draw like this is no less than all the previous wins I showed you. Absolutely fantastic handling of a very difficult situation. From both players, by the way. No, Inarkiev matched Wojtaszek move to move in this game. Matched anyone, as far as I can tell, anyone who could play this. The time situation, I really don't know. I wasn't... most of these games I wasn't able to watch live. No time difference and have too many things to do in the morning, sometimes lessons. Yeah. All right. Whew. More games. So, the hero of the start in the European Championship was the Croatian Grandmaster Ivan Šarić. You probably remember this guy. He crushed Magnus Carlsen in Tromsø Olympiad with the white pieces in some 25 moves. Yeah. He's a good player and he had some good results. But it kind of goes back and forth, and currently he's in a bit of a slump. And everybody thought, okay, the European Championship, that's real Šarić, because he was leading the tournament at half point with 5.5 out of 6. Unfortunately for Šarić, there was still 5 rounds to play. And this is the game that started his slide. Oh, it was wild, right? So Inarkiev won a queen, but still, black has pretty good unit there of these pieces. And after Ernesto played queen e5, I don't know if it was the key moment for Inarkiev's tournament. Possibly. Because, no, it's the start of the second half. Ernesto won this game and it opened up a streak, which reached 3 games. He won 3 games in a row. And that brought him up to 8 out of 9, which is out of this world result in such a field. Secured the qualification for him, of course, because they needed to qualify for a World Cup, the top 23. He probably would have qualified even if he lost the last 2 games. Yeah, he would have. But he made the last 2 draws, and the final tally was 9 out of 11. Also, it was a defining moment for Šarić because it started a terrible slide. After losing this game, okay, I'll show you what happened in this game. Rook f8, h4, very strong move. Look at that rook, it cannot do anything. Mate on h8. A couple of checks would only drive the white king to h3. He tried to do things with the knight, but it wasn't meant to be. Now white's lining up against g6. You can't even defend it, right? You think you're defending? Are you? Are you really defending here? White's turn. It didn't happen in the game, but I'm sure Inarkiev would have found it. Show me move here. One move from white, it's all it takes to bust it wide open. One move. Ah, come on, guys, you're good players. You found knight c6. You should be able to find a winning move here in this position. Take it. Bishop takes g6. Good job, guys. My opinion on why they don't merge women's chess with men's chess. 21st century feminism. What are you talking about? Women don't want to play with men. I mean, women also like to win games. Why don't you merge, men's chess with computer chess? And see if Magnus Carlsen would be happy to score, like, I don't know, -1 in the tournament and take the class prize as the best, carbon-based player in this event. It's just degrading. Nobody likes to lose games. I mean, women, well, they compete in their events, This is how it is. Now, well, Judith Polgar, yeah, right. Well, she's exceptionally good player. She was top 20 in the world for 10 years. Once, I believe, she reached top 5. Well, she's retired. No one else. Who you fan? No, she's playing now. She's improving. She's not Judith, of course. Nowhere near yet. She may get there in time. She's playing in Shamkir and Gashimov Memorial. But those are exceptional players. What about others? Do it slowly, not in a very top level. No, it's done. They're open tournaments. Most chess played in open tournaments. I mean, that's what it's done. That's how it's done. Only championships are for men and women. World Championship and national championships. I mean, I don't know, if you ask Irina Krosh and ask her, would you like to isn't that degrading for you, to play in women's tournament? Why don't you play in men's tournament? No, first of all, she would not have qualified over there, right? She's about a couple of hundred rating points short, or maybe 150. So there will be no women at the US overall, as they call it, US overall championship. And even if she was invited there, which in itself would be unfair, because if you want to have the even playing field, then you should just be gender blind. Don't invite her. But even if you did, she would be in the bottom half of the tournament table and probably would win less money. And she usually does. She's, 7-time US women's champion. Yeah, anyway. This is how the game ended pretty much. Yeah, this bishop b5, bishop d3. So, was it really over? Maybe not. Defining moment of the tournament for both players. Black should have played rook takes c6. Now, this is not a blunder. Sergei Shipov, the Russian commentator, my friend of mine and partner now, he actually thought that Black would survive this. Some amazing line, I think, where is the most amazing line? This one, when we go king f5, king g2. Alright, now Black plays knight a4. It's time to attack the pawns, right? Knight a4 check. There. I'm following this line. Queen a8 there. Okay, maybe some moves that it's still impossible to move the pawn. So Black goes g5. Now the end of this line is amazing. Queen check there, and finally you're gonna win the h5 pawn. And then eventually White's gonna make progress. But not so fast. This is amazing. Look at the White King. How do you break out of this prison? Now, this seems like an escape thing, and then you hit the wall. Big time. One queen can give a lot of checks, but cannot checkmate. Cannot force the black king away from the pawn on e6. h3. Risky. Excessively risky. Do you want my bishop now? Oh, please. Be my guest. Take the bishop. Fork. Otherwise, the pawn is going forward. White has to start some equilibristics, you know, just to survive the game. Make a draw. Fedoseev and Artemiev. Anyway, so this is the defining game, and I guess we've seen a lot of games already. He also beat Navarre and Kovalenko, but these two games, I'll include them in the database. That this complementary PGN file. I don't know if you guys been getting those, you know, but ask an ICC administrators, they'll tell you where to find it. Yeah, the opponents, it's kind of maybe nerves, but indeed, there's some strange losses by both David Navarre and Igor Kovalenko. Kovalenko in particular, you know, played a fantastic tournament, and in my opinion showed, even after losing that game to Inarkiev, he was able to win the last two games and finish clear second. Amazing player he is. Scored 8.5 out of 11. Fights to the end, and tremendous risk taker. Maybe he's gonna be my next hero. So I'll make a show about Igor Kovalenko of Latvia, the player nobody knows. But importantly, yeah, let's talk about. I'll ask questions. Well, I mean, I'll answer questions that you ask. So basically, the story is finished for today. A little Q&A session. All right. What about Russian hopes Fedoseev and Artemiev? Artemiev, I know he bombed, you know, totally out of the Russian Premier League, the team tournament. I don't think he even played in the European Championship. Fedoseev played reasonably well in the team tournament, went to the European Championship and had a bad tournament over there. Now, in general, I tell you this. Similar to what I said before about the frustrations and disillusions of the old age. It happens very quickly to you when you have to go through the ranks of players. I mean, Artemiev and Fedoseev. No, look who they have to play all the time. These tough guys like Nair, Hizmatulin, Inarkiev, Gaganov, you know what, many others, you know. There is every tournament they play in Russia, there's going to be 30 or 40 grandmasters. And some half of them are really strong players, you know. They 2650 and up. How do you go through these ranks? I mean, nobody had to do this. It's impossible. Magnus Carlsen, he didn't have to do this. He got his great results early, you know, and then, well, he made this jump. He was uplifted, if you wish, into this higher tournaments over there. He didn't have to fight his way through these guys. He did it maybe some tournaments, but not every day and not every tournament. Not even Nakamura. Who did Nakamura have to beat, you know, when to become a US champion when he was 17? A bunch of, what, 40-year-old guys? 45-year-old guys? Christensen and Yermolinsky and no, well, not to diminish their accomplishments. Obviously, no, well, they deserve what they got. Carlsen, Nakamura, and many others. But it's very difficult for a Russian player to do this. And then they go through this, and then it's still pretty tough competition there in on the top level. No one is guaranteed to win national championship in Russia. No one's guaranteed a spot on the Olympic team. People do get frustrated. Well, it's their shortcoming. They have to toughen up and they say, okay, I'm gonna fight it until it's done. But often, like that, they're unable to do this. Well, before they mature as men physically and mentally, and then it's a little bit too late. I wasn't able to do much over there. Throughout my 20s, I played a lot of tournaments and I was just bouncing around, always running in circles, and never really made a step forward. It's just a tough, unforgiving environment. Now, probably it would be better off, just, just lifting the guy over there, like Kasparov played his peers, one last time when he was 14 years old. And that's it. Never go back and never having to compete against players of his generation, or those are 5 years older. Never had to do this. Well, new opportunities, playing some other tournaments, and it helped him. Everybody would benefit from this. That's the kind of help we're talking about. Not really help in a sense necessarily that there were army of helpers, preparing theoretical variations. It's also kind of tournaments you get to play. Look what happened with Kasparov. So he goes to play some of the top tournaments in the USSR, and then there's a bunch of old grandmasters he simply beat in every game because they're 30 years older than him. He beat Pologaevsky like every time, and then the only people he had problems with were the really top guys, like Spassky or Petrosian. With time, he learned how to deal with them too. Next, where is Judith coaching? She lives in Budapest, and she's doing a lot of work there in youth chess. No, not connected with Susan Polgar. Susan obviously lives in the United States, and she's the head of the Webster University chess program, so to clear out some confusion there. Do I have insights on Sergei's preparation for the World Championship? No idea, none whatsoever. I saw him playing a fourth in line kind of draw against Mamedyanov in his favorite Queen's Indian, but that was just one game, first round of the Gashimov Memorial. Well, I will be keeping my eye on the second round games, and I will make a game of the day video after that. And well, who knows? Maybe Karyakin wins a brilliant game tomorrow or loses an interesting game. I will feature his game. Comment on Kasparov playing blitz with some strong. It's amazing what Kasparov did. Well, really, I never thought he would be able to do this. Hats off. No, I didn't take the hat off for Inarkiev. I take it for Garry Kasparov. I take my hat off, to Garry Kasparov. That's amazing what he did. It's just out of this world. Yeah, a little bit he started running out of steam, and maybe in the second half. He actually scored more points in the second day of the Blitz tournament, but his game was the most impressive on the first day. I just don't know what's gonna come out of this. I was hoping that maybe Garry would play in some of this, take part in his Grand Chess Tour, but no, there are 9 players that invited, and the 10th player for the first 2 stages, Paris and Brussels, it's gonna be played in June. They're both Rapid and Blitz, but the 10th place, what could have been Kasparov, but they took this guy from Norway. Know if you heard of him, Magnus Carlsen. So he's gonna be joining the 9 selected players. So Kasparov's kinda idle. I don't know when his next Blitz is gonna be. Sad passing of Artur Pomar. No, I don't have any stories, unfortunately. I've never met him. One thing I know that Pomar was very young, and he took some lessons from Alekin himself. I read about this somewhere. Pomar was maybe, 7 years old, and he was a prodigy. Well, great talent he was, and a classic gentleman, but I never had a chance. All right, that should probably round this up. I'm glad I answered all these questions, and had a chance to take my hat off. Thank you guys for watching this. I'm fascinated with Inarkiev's surge, so I wanna show this again. 42.7 in 1 month. Now, if he keeps it up, I know nobody can keep it up, but if he keeps it up, then he's gonna be about catching up with Magnus Carlsen 3 months from now. Any news about Korchnoi? I don't know. Well, I see pictures here and there. He's wheelchair bound. Yeah, tough for Victor. Very tough. What can we say? Yeah, you always lose one battle in your life. It's to father time. Thank you, guys. Oh, Wesley So. No, I can't skip that. No, Wesley So has no ceiling. Question is, he needs to put his life together. No, he's working on this. Obviously, well, first year in the United States now, second and third year. Well, it's only gonna get better. I hope he does it quick enough so he's still young and he can, really show his potential. Bye, guys. Bye. Bye. Bye-bye.